The storm rolled in heavy over Seabrook Harbor. A wild prelude. A symphony of raw power. It always made the small coastal town feel its most vulnerable. And somehow, its most alive. Wind howled like a primal lament, rattling ancient signs and slamming shutters against houses that stood stoic against the elements. Rain hammered Jack Carter's pickup. The wipers fought a frantic, losing battle against the deluge as he gripped the wheel. The worn leather, a familiar comfort in his hand. Beside him, 7-year-old Noah sat bundled up, a small shape already drifting off, his eyes heavy-lidded from a long day. Jack glanced over, a tired smile tugging at his lips. All he truly yearned for was the quiet ritual of home, the clatter of a soup pot, the soft fate of night, the gentle rhythm of their small world. But fate, in its unpredictable had other plan. As the truck turned onto the main road, a flicker beneath a street lamp caught Jack's eye. At first, it was indistinct, just a phantom of the wind, a bundle of discarded cloth. Then, it moved. His chest tightened. That familiar clench of paternal instinct. He slowed the truck, heart thudding slow and heavy against his ribs, until the image sharpened into an unbearable truth. A child, a little girl, standing utterly alone in the storm. Her small arms wrapped tightly around herself, hair plastered to her cheeks, her dress a sodden cling against her tiny frame. "Stay here, buddy," Jack murmured to Noah, his voice low and unsteady against the storm's roar. He didn't wait. He flung the door open. Rain slapped him instantly, a drenching embrace, as he sprinted toward her, crouching low to seem less imposing. "Hey there, sweetheart." He tried, voice carefully softened, a gentle balm against the chaos. "What are you doing out here?" She didn't answer. She just stared with wide, luminous green eyes, shining with a fear that shimmered beneath a film of tears. Thunder cracked overhead, deafening. She flinched, trembling harder, a fragile leaf in a hurricane. Jack didn't hesitate. "You're freezing," he whispered, more to himself than to her, the words a rough caress. Carefully, he reached out. Her tiny finger, ice-cold and delicate, slipped into his calloused hand. He pulled her close, lifting her almost weightless frame into his arms. She buried her face against his chest and let out a sigh of profound relief, as though she had been waiting for this exact warmth her entire life. Back at the truck, Noah leaned forward, his sleepy face etched with a child's candid confusion. "Dad, who is she?" Jack's answer came steady, though weighted with an unspoken promise. "I don't know yet, but she's safe now." He settled the little girl gently on the passenger seat, turned the heater to a low hum, then wrapped her in an old sweatshirt that swallowed her small body whole. She clutched it like a lifeline, a tangible anchor in a world that had seemingly abandoned her. Jack slid behind the wheel, jaw clenched, and pulled onto the slick road. The rain still lashed against the glass, a furious drum, but his thoughts were louder. A child didn't simply appear alone in a storm. Someone, somewhere, should have been looking, and until he knew who, he wasn't letting her out of his sight. In that moment, Jack Carter, tired father, small-town mechanic, felt the subtle, irrevocable shift in his own life. He had stumbled into something far grander than himself. Something that began with one quiet act of kindness under a storm-ravaged sky, and a silent, fierce promise to see this lost little girl safely home. The storm had finally eased by the time Jack pulled into the gravel driveway. The old pickup rattled to a halt in front of the small cedar cabin he and Noah called home. Tucked near the edge of the pines, its porch light glowed faintly through the mist, a soft, welcoming beacon against the lingering darkness. Jack scooped the little girl into his arms once more and carried her swiftly inside. The familiar scent of wood smoke and cinnamon wrapped around them like a comforting embrace as he shut the door against the last whispers of rain. "Here," Noah whispered, already rushing to press a soft towel into his father's hands. Then he darted to the cupboard and pulled down one of his own old sweatshirts, faded and now too big even for him. Jack carefully slipped the shirt over the girl's soaked dress. The fabric hung loose, almost playfully, against her tiny frame. She shivered once, a residual tremor, then let out the smallest, sweetest sigh of relief, a sound that settled deep in Jack's chest. He knelt before her, voice a gentle, low current. "You're safe here, sweetheart. No more rain tonight." The girl didn't answer. She only glanced around the cozy room, her green eyes wide, as though unsure if she was truly permitted to belong in such warmth. Her hands trembled slightly as Noah reappeared, this time with 2 mugs of cocoa, his father's special recipe, rich and sweet. He placed one carefully in front of her. "It's the best," he said with a shy grin. "Dad makes it a special way." The girl hesitated, her gaze flickering from Noah to Jack. Then, slowly, she lifted the mug with both hands and took a tentative sip. Steam curled up like a soft veil around her face, and for the first time that night, a small smile, faint, fragile, touched her lip. Jack felt a warmth bloom in his chest at the sight, a quiet easing of the tension he hadn't even realized he held. "Do you have a name?" "Sweetheart," he asked softly. Her lips parted. Her voice came as barely more than a whisper, a delicate breath of sound. "Lily." Jack repeated it quietly, letting the name settle between them. "A new, precious thing. That's a beautiful name." Noah leaned on the table, eyes bright with curiosity. "Where's your house?" "Lily. Do you know?" The little girl's gaze dropped to her lap. Her fingers twisted nervously in the oversized sleeves of Noah's sweatshirt. After a long silence, she murmured, "Akar." Her small shoulders hunched, as if even that single word carried an unbearable weight. Jack's jaw tightened. Akar. It wasn't much, but it was something, and it sent a ripple of cold unease through him. "Later," After tucking Lily into Noah's old bed, a soft blanket pulled high, a nightlight casting a gentle glow in the corner, Jack stepped onto the porch with his phone. He dialed Sheriff Morales, the only lawman Seabrook Harbor possessed. The sheriff's gravelly voice answered quickly, and Jack explained everything. The storm, the little girl, the name she had whispered. Morales promised to check the county's reports, then called back within the hour. No missing child matches her description, the sheriff said, a threat of worry in his tone. Not in this county, not in the surrounding ones either. Jack frowned into the darkness. The silence of the night suddenly felt menacing. That doesn't make sense. A kid that young doesn't just show up in the middle of a storm. I know, Morales sighed, but until we get more, keep her there. I'll keep looking. Jack ended the call, his thumb lingering against the screen. He turned back toward the glow of the living room window, where he could see Lily curled on the couch. Noah sitting beside her, showing her one of his comic books. The girl's head rested slightly against his son's shoulder. A gesture of quiet intimacy, as though she had known him far longer than an hour. Jack's chest tightened. Something about this didn't sit right. A little girl lost in the rain. No one looking. No one calling. It wasn't just unusual. It was wrong. As the last drops of the storm slid from the eaves, Jack Carter felt a truth settle deep in his gut. Whatever story Lily carried, it was far from simple. And until he knew what it was, she wasn't leaving his sight. Morning light spilled harsh and cold through the tall windows of Street, Mary's medical center. Miles away from the quiet harbor town, the steady, rhythmic beep of machines filled the room, slowly, reluctantly pulling Victoria Hale back from the suffocating darkness she had been drowning in. Her eyelids fluttered open. The sterile white ceiling swam above. The sharp scent of antiseptic hit like a rude awakening. Pain shot through her ribs when she tried to move, forcing a low gasp past her lips. For a fleeting moment, she couldn't place herself. Then, in a cruel, swift rush, the memories began to tug at the edges of her mind. The road, the rain, the screech of tires, and then nothing. Victoria. A calm, measured voice broke through her fog. She turned her head slowly, wincing, to see Martin Greer standing near the window. The family's longtime lawyer and her father's most trusted confidant. His gray suit was pressed impeccably. His expression, unreadable, a practiced mask. Relief might have been the expected response, but instead, a cold unease stirred within her. You're awake, Martin said. Unsteady. Almost too steady. You've been out for days.
The doctors say you suffered a concussion.
You'll recover, but you need rest. Her throat felt raw, parched. As she forced the words out, a desperate plea. Lily. Where's Lily? Martin's eyes flickered. Just for a sec, almost too quick to catch. Then he smoothed his expression and stepped closer to the bed. She's safe, he assured her softly. With her nanny. You don't need to worry. But Victoria's heart pounded harder. Not easier. She pressed a hand to her temple,
forcing her fragmented memories into sharper focus.
The storm had been fierce. She remembered gripping the wheel. She remembered Lily's soft laughter from the back seat as she tried to calm her daughter with a silly song. Then, the blinding flash of headlights. The violent crunch of metal. A cry. Her breath hitched. Lily had been with her. She wasn't with the nanny, Victoria whispered, the words breaking against her lips like glass. She was in the car. Martin's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. Victoria, concussions can distort memory. You shouldn't put yourself through unnecessary stress. The important thing is you're safe. Safe. The word scraped at her chest. She could still feel the phantom weight of Lily's small hand clutching hers. She could still hear that frightened gasp right before the world went black. No injury could erase that. Her pulse quickened. The room seemed to tilt as dread, cold and sharp, clawed its way up her throat. You're lying, she breathed, her voice sharper now. Despite the weakness in her body, Martin didn't flinch, but his silence was louder than any denial. Victoria pushed herself upright, ignoring the searing pain that sliced through her ribs. Every instinct screamed that something had gone terribly, irrevocably wrong, and the one person she trusted to tell her the truth was feeding her a script meant to calm. To control? To keep her in the dark? Her green eyes narrowed. A fire sparked through the haze of pain. Where's my daughter? For the first time, Martin's composure cracked. Just a flicker. But it was enough, and as the steady beeping of the monitors kept time with the frantic hammering of her heart, Victoria Hale understood the most terrifying truth of all. Lily wasn't safe. She wasn't with her nanny. She was gone. And someone, perhaps even her own family, had made sure of it. While the rain-washed streets of Seabrook Harbor lay quiet that morning, a mother's panic was rising miles away, sharp as the storm that had nearly taken her life. The silence in the hospital room pressed down heavier than the bandages on Victoria's ribs. Martin's polished words echoed in her mind, but they no longer held any weight. She knew what she had felt, what she had heard. Lily had been with her, and if Martin was denying it, then the truth had been buried under something far more sinister. Her father's shadow had always loomed large, even in her strongest moments. Richard Hale built an empire with an iron hand, controlling everything and everyone in his orbit. He had dictated Victoria's career, her marriage, even her friendships, as if her life were a chessboard. And she no more than a piece to be moved at his whim. When she finally broke free, when she chose to raise Lily without his approval, she had known it would not go unanswered. Richard did not lose, he reclaimed, and now it was sickeningly clear. He wasn't just coming for her anymore. He was coming for Lily. Victoria's breath came in sharp, ragged gasps. Her pulse raced as her fragmented memories sharpened into brutal clarity. The storm, the lonely road, the dark shapes of men waiting in the distance. Her father's men, The accident hadn't been a cruel twist of fate. It had been arranged. Her blood ran cold. They had meant to separate her from Lily, to take her child back into Richard's crushing grip. She swung her legs over the edge of the bed, ignoring the pain that burned through her side like a cruel fire. Martin had left, no doubt to report her condition, to keep her locked in place until her father decided her next move. But Victoria was done being a pawn. She staggered to the chair where her clothes had been folded.
Each motion was a stab of agony.
But the fire in her chest burned hotter than any pain. She had survived the crash. She would not surrender now. By the time the nurse returned, her bed was empty. The only sign she had been there was the faint imprint on the sheets, and the steady rhythm of the heart monitor, still beeping as if she had never left. Outside, night had fallen over the city. Lights blurred against wet pavement. Victoria slipped into the back of a cab, her coat pulled tight, her voice low as she gave the driver the destination. Not home. Not the office. The only clue she had left. Her car's last GPS ping, before the signal went dead. It led to a small coastal town called Seabrook Harbor. Her hands shook as she scrolled through the recovered data on the burner phone she had hidden from her father's watchful eyes. The timestamp was clear. The crash hadn't erased everything. Lily had been in the car until the very last recorded mile, and the trail ended in that harbor town. Victoria pressed her palm hard against her thigh, forcing her mind to steady. If Richard's men were already searching, then time was against her. He would twist every truth, bribe every official, and silence anyone who stood in his way. He would call it protection. He would call it love. But she knew better. For him, control was the only love he ever gave. Her reflection stared back at her in the cab's rain-streaked window.
Eyes once trained to be sharp in boardrooms, now glistened with a mother's fierce,
desperate fear. Hold on, Lily, she whispered, her voice trembling, but imbued with an iron will. I'm coming for you. And somewhere miles away, in a quiet cabin near the sea, a little girl clutched a borrowed sweatshirt and tried to believe she had finally found safety. Neither of them knew it yet, but the storm that bound them together was only just beginning. Night had truly settled over Seabrook Harbor, the kind of deep quiet that follows a storm's fury. Streets slick with lingering wetness, the air heavy with the scent of salt and pine, the ocean still restless, a low murmur against the cliffs. Inside Jack Carter's cabin, the soft glow of a single lamp spilled across the living room, a warm pool in the cool darkness. Lily had finally drifted to sleep on the couch. A small, peaceful bundle curled beneath one of Noah's old blankets. Jack leaned against the doorframe, watching her small chest rise and fall with each breath, a protective ache tightening in his own. She looked tranquil now, but the storm in his gut hadn't passed. Something about her story, or the profound lack of it, felt wrong. A jagged edge in the quiet night. The sudden crunch of tires on gravel snapped him alert. Every nerve alive, Jack straightened, gaze sweeping the darkened yard. It was late, far too late for neighbors, and no one drove this far out by accident. He stepped quietly across the room, pulling the old baseball bat he kept near the door. Not a gun, though a part of him wished for one, but something solid, something that would remind a stranger they weren't welcome. Headlights cut sharp, blinding swaths across the front yard before fading as the engine died. A sleek black sedan, polished even under the thin moonlight, stood sentinel in his drive.
From it stepped a man who looked carved from the night itself.
Dark suit, black tie, hair slicked back with a precision that hinted at ruthless control. His movements were fluid, deliberate, the kind that screamed not of a lost traveler, but of someone who knew exactly where he was going. Jack eased the door open and stepped onto the porch, his body a solid barrier between the stranger and the warm light of the living room, where Lily slept. The man's eyes flicked toward the window, just for a second too long, before he offered a smile. It was polite, too polite. Evening, the man said, his voice smooth as polished stone. Sorry to bother you this late. I'm looking for someone. Jack's jaw tightened. His voice came calm. Firm. That's so? Who exactly? The man clasped his hands behind his back, posture straight as a boardroom executive. A little girl, he said, Tornaven, almost conversational. Brown hair, green eyes, very important to her family. Jack felt the words like a blade pressing against his ribs. His pulse picked up, a quick flutter, but his face remained unreadable. Can't say I've seen anyone like that, he replied. Voice clipped. Cool. The man's smile didn't falter, though something in his eyes shifted, sharp and assessing. You sure? You be doing the right thing? Her mother is worried sick. Jack crossed his arms, his frame solid in the porch light. A silent challenge. Then maybe she should call the sheriff. That's how folks handle things around here. The man tilted his head, an amused glint in his eyes, as if Jack had said something utterly naive. Law enforcement doesn't always need to be involved in family matters. Jack's grip tightened around the bat. His instincts screamed. Everything about this man felt wrong. Too polished, too rehearsed. Like someone who didn't care where the girl truly belonged, only that she disappeared into his car. Well, Jack said evenly, gaze unwavering. Around here, that's exactly how it works. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant, rhythmic crash of waves. For a heartbeat, Jack thought the man might press harder, might step closer. Instead, the stranger slipped a card from his inner pocket and set it carefully on the hood of Jack's truck. No name, no company, just a number printed in stark black ink. If you see her, he said, voice smooth as oil, call me. It'll be better for everyone. He turned, slid back into the sedan, and drove off into the dark. The black car, a phantom melting into the night. Jack stood there, unmoving, until the taillights vanished down the winding road. Only then did he let out the breath he'd been holding. A long, slow release. He picked up the card, stared at the anonymous number, and felt a chill spread through him. Whoever that man was, he wasn't looking to save Lily. He was here to erase her. And Jack Carter knew one thing with absolute certainty. They'd come back, and when they did, he would be ready. Morning broke gray and unsettled over Seabrook Harbor, the storm's aftermath still clinging to the streets. A faint, lingering dampness. Jack had barely slept.
The blank card from the stranger rested heavy on the table, like a tangible threat he couldn't ignore.
He was pouring coffee into a chipped mug, the rich aroma a small comfort, when the crunch of tires on gravel reached his ears again. His body tensed instantly. A primal readiness. Not another one. He set the mug down, stepped to the door, and gripped the handle. Knuckles white. Through the glass, he saw not the sleek black sedan of the night before, but a smaller car, mud-splattered from a long, arduous road. The driver's door opened, and a woman climbed out. Her coat was wrinkled, her hair wind-blown and tangled from hours behind the wheel. Her eyes, sharp and storm blue, held a desperate intensity, locked on the cabin as though it held her last. Fragile hope? Jack opened the door a fraction, the baseball bat still leaning by the frame, his voice steady, a low rumble. "Can I help you?" The woman's breath caught. Her words broke out fast, raw, like a cry. "Where is she? Where's my daughter?" Jack froze, knuckles whitening on the doorframe. He had imagined this moment, prepared for 1,000 scenarios, but he hadn't expected her. This woman wasn't careless or detached. She looked like someone who had fought her way through fire to get here, every nerve ending screaming her desperation. Before he could speak, movement behind him broke the taut tension. "Mummy?" The word was soft, fragile, barely a whisper. Lily stood in the living room doorway, her small hand clutching the hem of Noah's oversized sweatshirt she still wore. Her green eyes widened, fixed on the woman outside. A flicker of something Jack couldn't quite name. Victoria's heart nearly split at the sound. A sharp, aching pang. She stepped forward, tears filling her eyes, spilling over. "Lily," she whispered, voice trembling with exquisite relief. "Sweetheart, it's me. It's Mommy." For a heartbeat, Jack expected the girl to rock, to throw herself into her mother's arms, to cling with all the fierce love of a child reunited. But Lily didn't move. She just stood there, her little fingers twisting nervously in the fabric, her gaze flickering to Jack as if waiting for permission, for a sign, for a silent reassurance. The silence carved deep into the air, a palpable weight in Jack's chest. This wasn't the joyful reunion he had pictured.
This was hesitation.
Fear. The kind of fear a child carried when home didn't feel safe anymore. Victoria's throat worked. Her lips trembled as she tried again, voice pleading. "Lily, baby, I've been looking everywhere for you. You're safe now. You can come with me?" Still, Lily's feet stayed planted. She bit her lip, her small shoulders tight, and glanced once more at Jack. And in that fleeting, almost imperceptible glance, Jack understood. She trusted him. A stranger. More than the woman who had given her life. The realization burned. A sharp, unexpected sensation. He didn't know Victoria. Didn't know what kind of mother she was, or what kind of family she came from. But he had seen fear in Lily's eyes the night he found her. And now he saw it again, shadowing every small hesitation. Jack shifted, his frame blocking the doorway a little more. His voice calm but unyielding. A quiet barrier. "She's been through a lot. She's not ready to just walk out that door." Victoria's heart cracked at his words. She had dreamt of this moment. Her daughter running back into her arms, clinging to her with fierce relief. Instead, she stood powerless on the porch, watching Lily's trust belong, for now, to someone else. And beneath her grief came a cold, terrible truth. Lily wasn't only afraid of being lost. She was afraid of going back. Tears blurred Victoria's vision as she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. "What have they done to you?" Inside, Jack kept his stance firm, his instincts louder than the woman's pleas. Something about this family, about the shadows reaching for Lily, wasn't right, and until he knew the full truth, he wasn't letting her go. Victoria stood on the porch, her hands trembling, not from the chill of the morning, but from the crushing weight of everything pressing in. Jack's frame filled the doorway, steady and immovable, his eyes fixed on her with a mixture of suspicion and a quiet resolve that hinted at something more. Inside, Lily hovered in the living room, her small body pressed against the couch, her gaze darting between them, like she understood more than either of them wished she did. Victoria's voice cracked as she tried again. "A desperate plea. You don't understand. If you don't let me take her now, they'll find her. My father will find her." Jack's jaw tightened. "Your father? The man in the suit last night? Was he working for him?" Victoria flinched. A small, involuntary movement that confirmed what Jack had already suspected. She drew in a shaky breath, fighting to steady her tone, to make him believe. "Richard Hale isn't just my father. He's powerful, ruthless. He sees Lily as his legacy, not his granddaughter. He doesn't care about her laughter, her fear, the way she clings to me at night. To him, she's an heir to mold, to control. And when I tried to take her away, when I finally said no, he sent them after us. That crash wasn't an accident. They wanted to separate us, and if he gets her back, I may never see her free again." Jack studied her, searching for cracks in her story, for any sign of manipulation. But what he saw instead was raw, unvarnished fear, layered beneath a fierce defiance. A woman used to fighting in boardrooms, holding her own against men twice her size, now stripped down to what mattered most. A mother, desperate to save her child. He turned, glancing at Lily. She hadn't spoken, hadn't moved, but her small green eyes met his. In them, He saw trust, not in her mother. Not yet, but in him. And that trust, fragile and undeserved, tied his hands as surely as chains. Jack exhaled slowly, rubbing the back of his neck, the gesture a release of unspoken tension. You're saying if I let her go with you, your father's men will be waiting? Victoria nodded, her voice dropping to a low, grave whisper. They already are. Silence pressed it, broken only by the soft hum of the heater inside. Jack leaned against the doorframe, the weight of the choice heavy on his shoulders. He had his own son to protect. He wasn't looking to be anyone's hero, but he thought of Lily shivering in the rain, clutching his sweatshirt, like it was the only safe thing she'd ever known. He thought of her glance this morning, hesitant but full of a quiet faith. Finally, he spoke, voice low, steady. Then you're not taking her alone. If you want to keep her safe, we do this together? But understand something? This isn't about you or your father. It's about her. And I won't let anyone, not even you, drag her back into fear. Victoria's breath hitched. Her shoulders sagged with a relief she hadn't dared to hope for. A fragile peace washing over her. Thank you, she whispered, though the words felt too small for the monumental offering he had just made. Jack stepped aside, his gesture quiet but final. Pack what you need. We leave before the next car pulls up this road. Victoria's eyes glistened as she stepped inside. Lily looked at her mother, then at Jack, and for the first time, the child's small fingers reached out, touching both hands at once. Attende, unspoken bridge. It was a simple gesture, yet it bound them tighter than any spoken promise as Jack closed the door behind them. A grim certainty settled in his chest. They weren't just hiding anymore. They were running. And if Richard Hale truly meant to hunt them down, then Jack Carter was ready to fight for Lily's trust, for Victoria's freedom, and for a chance at something greater than any of them had planned. The road wound deeper into the ancient forest, gravel spitting beneath the tires as Jack guided the truck along a narrow, forgotten path. Branches arched overhead, thick and gnarled, blotting out most of the fading light, casting the world into a deepening twilight. The silence inside the Jeep was profound, broken only by the hum of the engine, Victoria's sharp breath, and Lily's soft, even breathing from the back seat. Victoria sat rigid in the passenger side, her fingers knotted together, a silent prayer of protection. Every turn of the winding road pulled her closer to a place she hadn't seen in years, a place where time had been allowed to forget her. At last, the cabin came into view, tucked deep between towering pine, weathered by time and memory. To anyone else, it would have looked abandoned. Paint peeling like old skin, shutters half hanging, moss crawling languidly along the roofline. But to Victoria, it was more than just wood and stone. It was the one place her father had never touched, her mother's sanctuary, a ghost of comfort. Jack slowed, his eyes narrowing, the lines around them deepening in the dim light. The front door hung slightly open, a silent invitation, and his gut tightened. He cut the engine, letting the quiet swallow them whole, an oppressive cloak. Stay here, he muttered. But Victoria was already stepping on, her boots crunching against the damp earth, a fierce urgency propelling her forward. She pushed the door open, calling softly into the shadows, a name almost sacred. Mum. The cabin bore the brutal scars of intrusion. Cushions gutted, their stuffing spilling like secret, drawers ripped from their frame, papers scattered across the floor in a frantic, desperate search. Someone had been here. Jack's hand went instinctively to the small revolver he had stashed beneath his jacket. His voice low. Urgent. They've been through this place. Victoria's heart thudded against her ribs. A frantic bird trapped in a cage. She turned toward the back hallway. And then a sound. A faint creak of old wood. She froze, every muscle tensed, every sense on high alert. From the deepest shadows emerged a figure. Silver hair pulled back into a neat, elegant braid. Sharp-eyed, weary but utterly clear, Evelyn Hale stepped into the pale light. A vision of defiant strength. Mum, Victoria gasped, rushing forward, relief and anguish twisting together in her chest. A bittersweet embrace. Evelyn's gaze swept over her daughter, then landed on Lily, who peeked nervously from behind Jack, her small face pale. In that instant, Evelyn understood. Her features softened, though her voice carried the unmistakable steel of a woman who had seen too much. They were here asking questions. They know you're running. Before Victoria could respond, the low growl of engines shattered the stillness, a menacing sound that vibrated through the ground. Headlights cut through the trees, bouncing across the cabin wall, revealing its ravaged state. Jack swore under his breath. A low, guttural sound. Too late. Evelyn grabbed her daughter's arms, forcing her to look at her, her grip firm. Take her. Go out the back. The old Jeep is still there. It runs barely. Mom. No, Victoria pleaded, her voice thick with terror. There's no time. Evelyn cut her off, her voice fear, uncompromising. They won't leave without someone. Better it's me. I can buy you minutes. Minutes, Uni. Jack moved fast, scooping Lily into his arm, his eyes already scanning the back door, assessing the quickest escape. She's right. We can't stay. Tears stung Victoria's eyes as Evelyn pressed a set of keys into her trembling hand. You get her away from him, Evelyn whispered, meaning Richard, without ever having to say his name. You do what I couldn't. A pounding knock rattled the front door, violent and insistent, followed by Dalton Pierce's voice, smooth and cold, cutting through the thin wood. Open up. We know she's here. Gunfire cracked, splintering wood, shards flying. Evelyn shoved her daughter toward the back, her final words sharp and unyielding. Run. Jack yanked the back door open, the icy night air rushing in. A desperate breath. They bolted across the yard, slipping into the old Jeep as bullets tore through the silence. Whistling past them with deadly intent, Jack twisted the key. The engine coughed one, a hesitant groan, then roared to life, a defiant cry in the night. Gravel spat as he floored the gas, headlights carving a frantic path into the dark. Winding mountain road. Victoria twisted in her seat, her last glimpse of the cabin lit by muzzle flashes. Her mother standing tall and unyielding in the doorway. Evelyn Hale had chosen her battlefield, and in the agonizing choice, she had given them a chance. As the Jeep barreled into the night, Victoria clutched Lily close, her heart breaking even as it hardened with an unbreakable resolve. The cost of freedom had been set, and there was no turning back. The Jeep rattled hard against the unforgiving mountain road, every bump threatening to send them careening into the abyss. Jack's hands were locked on the wheel, knuckles wide with strain, his eyes flickering from the narrow trail ahead to the mirror behind them. Headlights burned through the encroaching darkness, black SUVs closing in, relentless as a pack of wolves on the hunt. Victoria clutched Lily against her chest, whispering soft, meaningless reassurances. Even as her own pulse thundered like a frantic drum against her ribs, the child buried her face deeper into her mother's coat, small fingers gripping tight, seeking solace in her warmth. Jack swore under his breath. "Hello?" Guttural growl. "They're not giving up." He yanked the wheel sharply to the right, plunging off the paved road onto a half-finished construction site. The Jeep bounced violently across gravel and churned dirt, kicking up clouds of dust that momentarily swallowed their pursuers' beams. Steel beams loomed like skeletal giants in the dark. Half-built frames groaned in the wind, a symphony of unfinished things. Jack maneuvered with breathtaking speed, weaving between massive machinery and towering stacks of timber, the tires spitting dust and loose rock. Behind them, one SUV clipped a pile of pipes, sending metal crashing to the ground with a deafening screech. Another swerved wide, struggling to keep pace, losing precious ground. "Hold on," Jack growled, jerking them back onto a precarious service road that curved steeply up the ridge. The mountain loomed ahead, steep and unforgiving. A dark, silent sentinel. He pressed the accelerator until the engine roared. A desperate plea for speed. The SUVs followed. But they were farther now, their menacing formation broken, their pursuit a little less precise. Victoria's mind raced as fast as the Jeep's wheels, a frantic symphony of thoughts. Running wasn't enough. Her father's reach stretched far beyond these roads, beyond this mountain. If they disappeared tonight, he'd simply send others tomorrow. An endless, suffocating hunt. They needed leverage, and she knew, with a chilling certainty, that she had it. Her fingers shook as she pulled out the burner phone, the one she had sworn to use only if there was no other choice. A grim last resort, she scrolled to the number etched into her memory. A number that held the key to her father's unraveling. She pressed call, lifting it to her ear, the plastic cold against her flushed skin. The line clicked. Victoria. Richard Hale's voice was calm, unnervingly calculated, as if he had expected this moment all along, planned for her desperate call. "You've caused quite a mess." Her grip tightened on the phone, her voice shaking but resolute. "Call them off. Now." A soft, chilling chuckle slid through the line, a sound that always raised the hairs on her arms. "You think you can order me? Those men are bringing my granddaughter home where she belongs." "You've lost perspective." Victoria's voice cut sharply through the tremor in her chest, a blade of raw defiance. "No, I've gained it. Because if anything happens to Lily, every document I've gathered, every hidden account, every offshore transfer, every bribe and blood-soaked deal will go public. I made sure of it." Silence hum, heavy and long, stretching taut between them. For the first time, Richard's voice wavered. A minute, almost imperceptible crack. "You wouldn't try me," she snapped, a fierce fire in her eye. "I've spent my life under your thumb, but not her, not Lily. If you want your empire to stay standing, you'll stop this hunt tonight." Jack shot her a quick glance, the corner of his mouth tight with grim approval. He gunned the engine harder, pulling them higher along the ridge as the SUV, barely visible in the rear view, began to falter. Finally, Richard spoke again, his tone colder than ice, edged with something she'd never heard from him before. Restrain. "Fine. They'll stand down. But don't fool yourself, Victoria. This isn't over." Her hand trembled as she ended the call. The night suddenly felt too quiet, without the frantic chase, without the growl of engines behind them. The headlights behind them flickered, then turned away, peeling back down the mountain road, receding into the darkness like defeated specters. Jack exhaled hard, his grip loosening slightly on the wheel, the tension draining from his body. "Looks like you hit him where it hurt." Victoria leaned back, clutching Lily closer, her voice low but steady, a newfound strength resonating within her. "For once, he's the one afraid." The Jeep crested the ridge, the first pale hint of dawn stretching across the horizon, painting the sky in soft, hopeful hues. They weren't safe yet, not truly, but for the first time since the storm, they had room to breathe. And for the first time in her life, Victoria Hale had stood toe-to-toe with Richard, and won. The weeks that followed carried a quietness that felt almost foreign after the chaos, a gentle hum of healing. Seabrook Harbor, washed clean by storms, both weather-made and man-made, breathed again. The waves rolled steadily against the shore, a timeless rhythm. The gulls circled above, their cries a familiar soundtrack. And in the heart of town, the faded sign of Carter Auto and Restoration swung gently in the sea breeze, a quiet testament to resilience. Jack stood outside one morning, wiping grease from his hands with a practiced ease, studying the fresh coat of paint on the shop's door. It wasn't much, but it was his, a place rebuilt not just for engines, but for the life he was trying to steady. To anchor? The sound of laughter drifted up the street. A light, melodious chime that pulled his gaze. Victoria and Lily were walking hand in hand, the little girl skipping every few steps, her curls bouncing under the benevolent sun. Lily broke away first, running the last few feet to him. A blur of joyous energy, she threw her arms around his waist with the easy confidence of a child who no longer questioned safety, who had found her own kind of steadfast ground. "Guess what?" she said, her eyes sparkling like emeralds caught in the sun. Jack crouched, meeting her grin, a warmth spreading through him. "What's that?" "I start school next week. Real school, with a backpack and everything." Her excitement spilled over, her small hands waving in the air, as if she were painting the vibrant picture right there in front of him. Jack's chest warmed, a tender ache. "That's pretty amazing, kiddo," he said, ruffling her soft hair. Victoria reached them, her pace slower, more deliberate, her eyes softer, deeper than the first night she had stood on his porch, demanding her daughter back. There was a gentleness about her now, one that seemed to grow each time she stepped into this small, unassuming town. "She's been counting the days," she admitted, her voice carrying a mix of pride and a quiet wonder. Jack glanced from Lily back to her, something unspoken settling between them. A current of shared experience, of battles won, of trust meticulously, gently built. They had walked through fire, through bullets and betrayals, through nights when survival was the only goal. And yet, here they were, standing in front of a shop door on a quiet morning, talking about backpacks and classrooms. It felt almost like grace. "Place is looking good," Victoria said, nodding at the shop, her gaze lingering on the freshly painted wood. "Not bad for a guy who used to just patch up old truck," Jack replied, with a half smile, a hint of easy humor in his eye. Her lips curved slowly, sensually, a quiet invitation. "You're still patching up old trucks." "Yeah," he admitted, his gaze holding hers. "But now I get paid better for it." The banter was light, a delicate dance, but beneath it ran something deeper, a current of understanding that vibrated between them. Lily tugged on her mother's hand. Then Jack's, as if she knew exactly what she was stitching together, an invisible thread weaving their separate lives into a nascent tapestry. The child had found safety between them, trust in both, and in her innocence. She had already written the story. The adults were still too cautious to name. As the three of them stepped inside the shop, sunlight poured through the wide garage doors, catching on dust motes that danced like sparks of something new, something hopeful. Jack watched Victoria settle into the space, her presence a soft, quiet anchor. Lily perched on the counter, flipping through a comic book Noah had left behind. A picture of contented ease, for the first time in years. The cabin on the cliffs, her mother's sanctuary, didn't feel like the only place that could be called home. Victoria met his eyes then, holding them longer this time, her smile slow but certain. A subtle invitation, a deep, knowing warmth. "I think we'll be staying here a while," she said, her voice steady as a promise, a quiet declaration of belonging. Jack nodded, the corner of his mouth lifting in a reciprocal smile. "Good," he answered simply, his voice a low, résonnant acceptant. The scent of motor oil and sawdust, of coffee and old books, mingled with the faint, sweet scent of Lily's hair and Victoria's quiet presence. In that moment, a different kind of quiet settled over Jack Carter's world, a quiet that tasted of peace, and of a future finally open to the unexpected. Gentle intimacy that had begun with a storm and a lost child.